During a time of great crisis, when the kingdom of Judah stood on the brink of destruction, a young king arose with a divine mission. He was not like the kings who ruled before him. He had a heart turned toward God and a burning desire to restore the faith of the people. His story is marked by faith, courage, and astonishing miracles. This king is Hezekiah, man remembered not just as a ruler but as a powerful example of absolute trust in God. But who was Hezekiah? What made him one of the most revered kings of Judah? How did he face one of the greatest enemies of his time? And what was the key to his victory? In this video, we will explore Hezekiah's journey, the king who restored true worship of God, challenged giants, and witnessed miracles unfold before his eyes. Get ready for an exciting journey filled with deep lessons of faith and leadership. Let us begin with the crucial moment of his rise to the throne of Judah, and how his story intertwined with the hope of a people longing for change. 1. The reign of Hezekiah, ascending to the throne. Hezekiah was the son of Ahaz, a king of Judah who unfortunately left a poor spiritual legacy for his people. Ahaz was known for his idolatry, for making dangerous alliances with foreign nations, and most of all, for leading the people away from God. By the time of Ahaz's death, Judah was in a state of spiritual and moral decline. God's people were lost, and many had abandoned true worship. It was in this desperate scenario that Hezekiah, at just 25 years old, ascended to the throne of Judah. He knew the task ahead would not be easy. The kingdom was divided, weakened, and surrounded by growing enemies. But instead of following in his father's footsteps, Hezekiah made a bold choice. He decided to restore the worship of God and set the nation back on the right path, leading the people into a new era of faithfulness to the Lord. Hezekiah's first action as king was to make a decision that would change Judah's destiny. He reopened the doors of the house of the Lord and repaired them. He ordered the cleaning of the temple in Jerusalem, which had been neglected and filled with impurities brought by his father's idolatrous practices. He commanded the priests and Levites to restore the altars and remove any trace of worship to foreign gods. By doing this, Hezekiah showed a firm commitment to God and to true worship. This was the kind of leader Judah needed, someone willing to put faith in God above the conventions and practices that had led the people astray. Hezekiah knew that, for the kingdom to be restored, the people needed to reconcile with God. This spiritual reform was not just symbolic, it was the key to bringing blessing and protection upon Judah during such difficult times. Hezekiah didn't stop with internal reforms. He also strengthened Jerusalem's defenses, preparing the city for external threats. Judah was surrounded by enemy powers, and the king knew that survival would only come through total trust in God. 2. Religious reform. Returning to the Lord, Hezekiah's reign was not only marked by military strengthening and strategic alliances. Without a doubt, his greatest legacy was the religious reform he implemented. He knew that for Judah to be truly restored, it wasn't enough to correct political or social issues. The people's hearts needed to return to God, and that meant bringing back true worship of the Lord. Hezekiah understood that the temple in Jerusalem, the place of worship to God at that time, was in ruins. The altar of sacrifices was abandoned, and many priests and Levites had turned away from their calling. The temple itself, which should have been the place where people encountered God's presence, had been neglected and profaned by pagan practices. The worship of other gods had infiltrated Judah, driving the people away from their true purpose. With courage and determination, Hezekiah began a process of purification and restoration of the temple. He summoned the priests and Levites, instructed them to consecrate themselves again to God, and ordered that everything impure be removed. In 2 Chronicles 29, we read that Hezekiah commanded the temple to be cleaned from the impurities that had accumulated over the years, and that the altars dedicated to foreign gods be destroyed. At the heart of this reform was the understanding that true worship did not depend merely on rituals or external practices, but on the sincere surrender of the heart to God. Hezekiah knew that the people needed to rediscover the power of genuine worship and prayer. Only with this inner change would it be possible to face the adversities that were soon to come. The impact of this reform was profound. The people of Judah, who had been far from God for many years, turned back to the Lord with sincere hearts. The celebration of Passover, which had been forgotten, was restored with great joy and reverence. In 2 Chronicles 30, we read that Hezekiah sent messengers throughout the kingdom, inviting the people to celebrate Passover in Jerusalem. The response was surprising. Thousands gathered, coming from all regions, to renew their covenant with God. 3. The king's covenant with God. Trust in the Lord. Hezekiah's reign was not just a period of reforms and external actions. It was also a time of deep trust and covenant with God. The greatness of Hezekiah lay not only in his ability to restore the temple or renew worship, but above all in being a man of faith, who believed that God was his only source of strength and protection. This understanding of God as his refuge would soon be tested in extraordinary ways. The greatest challenge for Hezekiah arose with the threat of Assyria, the most powerful empire of that time. Under the command of King Sennacherib, Assyria was on the rise, having invaded and conquered several nations around Judah, destroying cities and toppling entire kingdoms. As the Assyrian army approached the gates of Jerusalem, Hezekiah knew the situation was desperate. His kingdom was small and militarily weak compared to Assyria's vast power. He was about to face one of the biggest tests of his faith. Instead of falling into despair, Hezekiah made a crucial decision. He would not trust in alliances with other kingdoms or rely on his own military strength. Instead, he turned to God. In 2 Kings 19, Hezekiah enters the temple and, before God, lays out Sennacherib's threat in a heartfelt prayer. With humility and unwavering trust, Hezekiah not only asked for help but also made a firm declaration of faith in God's sovereignty. He knew that only God could deliver Judah from this imminent threat. God's answer did not delay. The prophet Isaiah, sent by the Lord, brought a message of comfort and assurance. Jerusalem would not fall, and Sennacherib would be defeated. What happened next was one of the most remarkable miracles in biblical history. That night, the angel of the Lord struck down 185,000 Assyrian soldiers, and Sennacherib's army was forced to retreat. When the king and the people of Judah awoke the next morning, they saw that the enemy had been defeated without a single soldier from Jerusalem having to lift a sword. The victory was clear. God had heard Hezekiah's prayer and fulfilled his promise to deliver his people. This episode stands as a clear example of Hezekiah's unwavering trust in God. In times of crisis, he knew that no matter the size or power of the enemy, his trust was in the Lord, and that was enough to guarantee victory. Hezekiah's story teaches us that even when circumstances seem impossible, trusting God can bring about victory in ways we never imagined. Hezekiah not only trusted God to save his people, but also took practical steps to protect Jerusalem. He built a tunnel to ensure the city's water supply during the siege, showing that faith in God and practical action go hand in hand. He demonstrated that trusting God doesn't mean neglecting preparation, but recognizing that true victory comes from the Lord. 4. The test of faith. Hezekiah's illness and the miracle of healing. After the great victory over Assyria, Hezekiah experienced a time of peace and prosperity during his reign. However, the king's life would soon face a new and very different challenge, a personal trial that would put his faith to the test once again. In 2 Kings 20, we read that Hezekiah became gravely ill. He was at the brink of death, and the prophet Isaiah was sent to him with a direct message from God. "Set your house in order, for you will die and not live." Such an abrupt announcement certainly brought great anguish to Hezekiah, who had served God faithfully and led the nation through spiritual restoration. Yet, now he was facing one of the most difficult moments of his life. What did Hezekiah do in the face of this devastating news? He did not surrender to despair, nor did he passively accept the end of his life. Instead, he turned to God with a humble and sincere heart. The king turned his face toward the wall and prayed to God, saying, "Remember, O Lord, how I have walked before you in truth and with a loyal heart, and have done what is good in your sight." It was as if Hezekiah was pleading, "Lord, give me more time to live." God, who knows every heart, heard Hezekiah's prayer. Before Isaiah had even left the palace, the Lord sent him back with an unexpected answer. In his mercy, God would grant Hezekiah an additional 15 years of life. But this wasn't just an extension of his days. God also promised to deliver Jerusalem from the hand of the king of Assyria, further strengthening Hezekiah's faith in God's power and faithfulness. Hezekiah, grateful for God's mercy, received this miraculous healing. Through a supernatural sign, the Lord made the shadow on the sundial move backward 10 degrees of Izzy, miracle to all, proving that God had answered the king's prayer. This miracle not only restored Hezekiah's health, but also strengthened his faith, reminding him that God holds power over life and death. 5. Hezekiah's failure. The visit of the Babylonian envoys. After being healed and granted 15 more years of life, Hezekiah entered a period of prosperity and stability. He became a respected figure, and his kingdom seemed to be on the rise. At that time, Babylon, a distant nation beginning to emerge as a growing power, sent envoys to Hezekiah to congratulate him on his recovery. The Babylonians had heard about the miracle and wanted to establish diplomatic relations, while also learning more about the works of God. Unfortunately, Hezekiah did not seek God's guidance before receiving the envoy. Wanting to impress them, he showed them all the treasures and wealth of his kingdom. He took them through the royal palaces and revealed everything he possessed, including the treasures of the temple. Hezekiah opened the storehouses and displayed the weapons, riches, and the military strength of the kingdom of Judah, perhaps hoping to gain political favor with Babylon. Then the prophet Isaiah came to Hezekiah and asked him, "What did these men say, and where did they come from?" Hezekiah replied that they had come from Babylon and that he had shown them everything in his kingdom. Isaiah then delivered a solemn prophecy. In the future, all the treasures Hezekiah had shown would be taken away to Babylon. This would happen because of Judah's idolatry, apostasy, and rebellion against God. Hezekiah's reaction was curious. Instead of expressing concern for the future of his nation and his people, he said, "The word of the Lord which you have spoken is good," seemingly relieved that the judgment would not come during his lifetime. At that moment, Hezekiah didn't fully grasp the long-term consequences of his actions. This episode serves as a clear example that even great leaders, those who demonstrate faith and trust in God, are still vulnerable to pride and self. Hezekiah had shown immense trust in God during the Assyrian threat, but now, in dealing with the Babylonians, he failed to recognize that his confidence should remain in God, not in material wealth or human alliances. This failure would not go without consequences, as Judah's history would later be marked by the Babylonian invasion and exile. However, God still showed mercy to Hezekiah, and despite his mistakes, the Davidic lineage of which Hezekiah was a part would continue as the line through which the Messiah would come. 6. The legacy of Hezekiah: faith, hope, and God's grace. The reign of Hezekiah is one of the most impactful stories in the Bible, full of highs and lows, yet overflowing with lessons about faith, trust in God, and the consequences of human choices. In the end, he is remembered as a king who did what was right in the eyes of the Lord, even though, like all of us, he was imperfect. Hezekiah's legacy is not only found in the religious reforms he carried out, but also in how he faced life as challenges. When confronted with the crisis with Assyria, he didn't trust in his own strength or in political alliances. He turned completely to God. When he stood at the brink of death, he sought God in prayer and received divine mercy. Hezekiah teaches us that true faith in God is demonstrated not only in external victories, but also in our ability to recognize our weaknesses, limitations, and dependence on his grace. The story of his life is a reminder that, despite the difficulties we face, we can trust God to guide our steps. Looking at Hezekiah's life, we are reminded that God is always willing to hear our prayers, to give us direction, and to intervene on our behalf, especially when we turn to him with a sincere heart. And just as he responded to Hezekiah's prayer, God continues to be a faithful source of mercy and help for those who trust in him. Like Hezekiah, we can learn to trust God not only in times of great victory, but also during life, his difficulties and challenges. Conclusion: the story of Hezekiah is a powerful testimony of how God can use leaders and also ordinary people to accomplish his will on earth. His life teaches us the importance of true faith and of a heart that seeks God in all circumstances. May we follow Hezekiah's example, trusting God with all our being, seeking his guidance and mercy. He is always ready to restore us. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, leave your comment, and share this video so more people can be blessed by this message.